All right, good morning, everybody. It's just after 11, so we'll go ahead and get started. This is Amanda Lee, the Service Hydrologist at the National Weather Service office here in Grand Forks. We've also got Greg Gus, the Warning Coordination Meteorologist here in Grand Forks on the line. We're just going to do an overview of our first 2022 spring flood outlook that we released just yesterday. So let's go ahead and dive right in. So quickly, as the bottom line up front, a little bit of different story from what we were saying about a year ago. The risk for significant flooding is near to maybe even slightly higher than historic levels. So, however, that does mean at this time that minor to moderate flooding is the main threat across the basin. We had those dry and pretty extreme drought conditions from last year across the area throughout the summer. And then last fall, we did finally receive some timely precipitation, which helped improve those drought conditions. So that helped to recharge the soil moisture a bit and get base stream flows back up to near normal as we headed into freeze up. So far this winter, the snowpack and the water content in that snowpack is around normal to maybe slightly above normal in some spots. So overall, kind of a normal spring flood threat at this time, maybe a little bit elevated, a little higher than normal with that higher than normal snow in some areas. The February, March, and April climate outlooks are looking at equal chances for below normal and above temperatures and precipitation. So with this ongoing La Nina event, there's really no strong signal either way in our area for colder or warmer or wetter or drier at this time. So that's what we're looking at as the bottom line here as we head into this spring at this time. So here's a high-level overview showing our river forecast points up and down the basin. You could see the oranges and the red squares indicating minor to moderate flooding. All of these squares are indicating the 50% risk category. So there's a 50-50 chance that these locations up and down the valley will see either that minor to moderate flooding. There's a few green specks in there, which wouldn't see any flooding. And then Fargo has a 50% chance of getting into that major flood category. So going back a little bit, let's talk about a little bit these drought conditions that we had last year. On the left is the US Drought Monitor from August 17th of 2021. You'll see up in our neck of the woods, those reds and dark reds across the area, indicating the extreme drought and exceptional drought even that our area experienced. This was at the peak of the drought conditions. And then, like I said earlier, thankfully, we did get some of those fall rains. And then coming up till now with our snowpack out there too, on the right, you'll see the latest Drought Monitor issuance from the January 25th, indicating all those reds, all those that drought wording is essentially removed from our area, especially in the southern valley. And then more into the northern valley, you'll see that yellow category, which means abnormally dry, so not technically drought, with a little bit of maybe some drought conditions along the international border and over into portions of north central Minnesota. So overall, quite a turnaround from where we were at about 5-6 months ago. So this fall and winter, so starting October 1st, 2021 up until just a few days ago, you'll see some blues and greens and purples indicating above normal precipitation for that time period, looking at kind of in that 1.5 to 3, maybe in pushing up to 5, 6 in some locations in those purple spots. So we're looking at this time period last year, 3 to 6 inches more precipitation this time period this year compared to that time period last year. So quite a different story from where we were at last winter. However, it seems like there's a lot of snow out there. We weren't quite used to that after the quiet conditions last year, and we are a bit above normal, but it's not extreme yet to this point. However, obviously, we're only pushing towards the end of January. We've got a few months of winter to go, and then of course our wild card spring weather to worry about. So once again, looking back to roughly 6 months ago, on the left here was the soil moisture. We were at pretty much really close to the bottom of the rankings there for dry soils during the height of our drought conditions. Then the right, you'll see a more recent depiction there indicating more normal, that the white areas for much of the valley, and then maybe in the far southern, just maybe above normal a little bit as you get closer down towards the South Dakota border. So the analysis actually has soil moisture rankings kind of within an inch, you know, give or take an inch here, below, an inch above here or there, those top few feet of the soil. So pretty crazy to think about where we were at a while back, 6 months ago, to where we're at this point. As I said, base stream flow is also kind of back up to near normal. On the left here, you'll see from August, when we were at the height of the drought conditions, the below normal, or even much below normal for some locations over in northern Minnesota for stream flow. And then on the right, bottom right graphic, you'll see back in November, around the freeze-up time, the stream flows were more in the green category there, which is more around normal, maybe a tad below normal still over in north central Minnesota, and a few pockets of maybe even a little bit above normal. But generally, overall, looking at the basin as a whole, we were able to get back up into that near normal stream flow before we froze up for the winter. So I think everybody's seen this graphic before. The 7 main ingredients for a spring flood in the Red River Basin. We already covered that fall moisture and base stream flow, and how we're kind of sitting around normal now with soil moisture and stream flow after our fall rains and then precipitation so far this winter. So what do the rest of the factors look like? Frost depths, you'll see we were kind of warm to start the winter, but then especially lately now in the last month or so, we did get some good rounds of cold conditions, which helped frost depth, plummet pretty quickly. Kind of normal to maybe slightly deeper than normal in some spots up and down the valley. Generally 12 to 30 inches we're frozen down to. Not quite as deep down in the southern valley, more in that single digit into the teens, a little higher or a little deeper as you go further north in the valley. Our latest measurement here at the office in Grand Forks, we were down to 27. So we will see those, continue to fall as we go through the winter here. We'll see how far they get before we can start getting into the melt here. Talking snow depth, like I said, quite a change from where we were at this time last year, but not too crazy out of the normal. You'll see a lot of pinks and purples and dark blues, kind of indicating more, in the teens probably, snow depths, maybe a little bit more out in the Devil's Lake Basin and the James River Valley, over into west central Minnesota. But up in northwestern Minnesota, there are little pockets of even less. So overall, we say 6 to 20 inches of snow depth across the basin, which is pretty large range. But overall, it's pretty widespread. These values, just the little pockets over in the Minnesota side with maybe a little bit less. So our latest measurement here in Grand Forks, we were around 8 inches, and then our official observer down in Fargo has been at 11 inches for a few days. So how much water content is in that snowpack? Near to above normal again, once again, kind of in that 1.5 to 3.5, which is generally around normal for this time of year around the basin. Our latest measurement earlier this week here in Grand Forks was right around 2.5. So once again, a little bit more, kind of on the outskirts of the basin, the Central Valley kind of more in that 2.5 inch range. And then you move out to northwestern Minnesota, maybe a tad less over there. So just for fun, let's go back to where we were at last year, kind of in early mid-February, and you'll see not a whole lot going on for snow water content across the area. Northwestern Minnesota, kind of up in that Lake of the Woods and Beltrami area, Beltrami County area, did see a little bit more out there, but not a whole lot of water content to speak of across a good portion of the valley last year in mid-February. Go back even further to 2020, same time frame, and you'll see quite a change from where we were at in 2021, which everyone knows with some spring flooding we did experience in 2020. So the point of trying to show these graphics for comparison is just to show that we're kind of in the middle of the pack right now. Last year was pretty dry, not a whole lot out there. The year before was on the other end of the spectrum, and we're right in the middle right now as we head into the spring season. So we covered frost depth and the snow and snow water. So what is it going to look like as we move forward? Quiet and pretty much generally dry for the next week or so. There is a shot, I think, Monday and into Tuesday for maybe a little bit of precipitation. Not a real big snowmaker, maybe a little bit. Probably some winds though, bringing some blowing snow and visibility issues that we've really grown accustomed to in the last 6 weeks or so. So kind of the same story. No real big snowstorms precipitation-wise on the horizon, but maybe still some impacts with the blowing snow. Looking a little further ahead into the first part of February, the Climate Prediction Center does show increased chances for below normal temperatures in the valley, with maybe some above normal precipitation during that week period. And then moving a little further out as we look into later into mid-February, it's continued chances for below normal temperatures, but then back to more of equal chances for that below normal or above precipitation. And that's going to kind of be the story as we move through the rest of the winter into the spring. So looking at February, March, and April as a whole, might start out a little colder in February here, and then move towards these equal chances for below normal and above temperatures and precipitation, indicating there's really no strong signal either way. There could be some days above, some days below, generally maybe evening out to be average. So we'll have to see how that plays out. So all of that leads into what we're looking at number-wise for this first outlook issuance. So here's our probabilistic plot for Fargo. Just as a quick review, the black lines with the triangles is the conditional simulation, which is indicating the current conditions and the current outlook. And then the blue line indicating historical simulation, taking into account all those decades of historical data. So the black line above the blue line, does indicate that we're above normal, especially at this location of Fargo, for flood conditions. So the green box there kind of covers that 25 to 75% range. So if we jump ahead and we say, the rest of this winter and into spring, we stick with, around normal temperatures and precipitation, we'll probably fall somewhere within this range, which would be moderate to maybe some low-end major flooding for the Fargo-Moorhead area. Note that this isn't really taking into account, precipitation type. As we get closer to spring, things could turn more to rain, which obviously has a different impact than snow. And then not really also taking into account the rate of how the snow melts. If we see a rapid melt, obviously that's going to elevate our flood chances. But if we have a more slow, gradual melt, that'll help temper things a little bit. So what about if we get really quiet? We get a little warm and little to no additional precipitation through the rest of the winter into the spring. Maybe we'll be at the lower end of the spectrum here, and maybe Fargo will stay kind of in that minor flood stage. And then on the other end, if we, for some reason, the flip switches and we start receiving some significant above normal precipitation through the next 6-8 weeks, we might be towards the higher end of the distribution here and really get into that major flood category. Doing the same thing for Grand Forks, much of the same, keeping near normal temperatures, and precipitation will likely fall in this, general moderate flooding in the 25 to 75% here. With not a lot of precipitation as we move forward, maybe minor flooding, maybe we'll even, stay out of flooding if things get really dry. And on the other end, if we start receiving a ton more precipitation, Grand Forks has got the chance to bump up into that major flood category. So, not all bets are off yet on what kind of flooding could be seen up and down the valley. It's just going to kind of depend on what happens with the weather moving forward. Lastly, I wanted to throw in a little bit for Devil's Lake here. So this is the latest outlook for lake levels at Devil's Lake. And that 25 to 55% range, shows kind of that 1450 to 1451 feet. The current level is down to 1447 and the 1447.2-ish. So we could see a pretty significant rise there on Devil's Lake with the snow that they've received out there. And then the fall rains really did help things recover a little bit last year after lake levels dipped pretty low. Our graphics this year now include, you'll see in the red oval there, the pumping schedule. So last year we did significantly reduce the pumping in our model due to the State Water Commission bringing things down just because there wasn't enough water to pump, and water quality was too bad. So we bumped that back up to where we used to be at 350 CFS, and that'll run from June all the way through beginning of November when the pumps might shut off. So that's being incorporated into this lake level outlook. So really looking at the numbers here, I'll just kind of try and talk generally over these instead of get too specific. So Devil's Lake numbers at the top, like I said, and then moving down into the Red River, the Red River main stem, you'll see that like 50% numbers there. Generally, mostly in that moderate flooding with the red numbers. And either side of that could see some minor or some major there. So kind of generally around in that moderate flood for most of the region up and down there. Moving into the Minnesota side, a little bit less chances there. So not a lot of reds or even really purples at all. When you look at the numbers here for the Minnesota tribs, maybe more minor flooding along them. And then moving to the North Dakota side, kind of back into that moderate with maybe some increased chances for major flooding, especially over in the Wilder Ice on the North Dakota side and Cheyenne and Maple basins there. I just wanted to throw a quick shout out here to our probabilistic flood outlook summary page, or PFAS, which we've been talking about the last few years. As we've said, this data that's located on this website is the same data that is shown in all of our other probabilistic graphics, just kind of in a different format. And this includes all of the Red River main stem forecast points and all the tributaries. So any of those points that we have forecasts for. The website is at the bottom there, weather.gov/FGF/PFOS, PFOS. I just wanted to highlight that this product remains experimental. So please keep your feedback coming. We've gotten a lot of great comments that have helped us improve things over the last couple of years. And our headquarter folks really like to see those comments come in, and it helps encourage them to keep this project going. So please keep the feedback going. You can provide feedback either to me via email at amandalee@noaa.gov, or from that PFAS website, there is a survey link that you can complete. So as a reminder, here's what the graphics look like. This is the outlook from this week for Fargo. So the same data that we saw before, just a little bit easier to interpret for some people. So check that website out and please provide feedback if you feel like it. So just to wrap up, significant flooding, we are looking at better chances this year than we sure were last year, but still nothing too crazy yet. Near normal, maybe above normal, or maybe above the historic chances in some places. Looking at minor to moderate flooding for the main threat for most locations. We've returned back to near normal soil moisture and base stream flow thanks to those fall rains. Near normal to above normal snow and snow water content in some places across the basin. As we look through the rest of the winter and into the spring, and we head towards the melt, maybe be a little bit colder than normal to start February, and then we'll return to those equal chances for below normal and below normal or above normal temperatures and precipitation as we head into the spring. So I think that is all I have. Our next outlook will be issued just less than 2 weeks from now on Thursday, February 10th. And then we'll do another on the 24th and then March 10th. So on that Thursday, we will do all of our graphics and products will be issued at that time. And we'll also do the webinar those weeks on the Thursday, not Friday like this week. So be on the lookout in the next week or so for an invite for those webinars. We'll probably just do one webinar invitation for all three of those. So keep that in mind. We're looking at that Thursday afternoon for all three of those dates. So feel free to contact us 24/7 if you ever need us at that phone number or the office email there, or you can contact Greg or myself if you've got any questions or need anything as we move through the rest of the winter and the spring.